Hello, friends, and welcome back to Ghouls Night In, the spooky chat show with your best ghoul friends. I'm Penny Snark.
And I'm Midge Munster. And as is typical with this podcast, I am bringing a new and current hyperfixation to the pod today.
Hell yeah, that's what we love.
uh, Unfortunately, we just lost a very cool director, David Lynch.
Mm.
And I actually somehow escaped ever seeing anything by David Lynch until like a year ago. And I had, much to everyone around me's chagrin, never seen Twin Peaks until I started watching it on a whim a few weeks ago. And now it is my soul's mission to consume everything he ever made. But so, in like keeping with his passing, I wanted to do this episode just more about him and his work. I'm sure we'll cover Twin Peaks at some point. I have not finished it yet, but I wanted to just talk about David Lynch and his life and his work, and also about some weird freaking films I've watched this week. So,
Hell yeah.
Penny, what do you have background with Mr. Lynch?
Yeah, I would say that I am not super informed on Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Lynch. I also have not seen Twin Peaks. I started it at some point and I've seen like bits and bobs from it.
Mm-hmm.
So like I recognize certain things. I have seen Eraserhead and was definitely aware of him kind of, as a excellent person bringing weirdness to the world. So
Yes.
I'm excited to hear more.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's start with, where the heck did he come from? So,
Yeah. Where did you
uh,
come from?
where'd you come from, David Lynch? Well, he was born on January 20th of 1946 in Missoula, Montana,
Okay.
and raised in just kind of a standard middle class American setting, which is important to know because it becomes very formative to basically everything he does. uh, he had kind of remarked several times that his childhood was marked with this eerie sense of normalcy, and that definitely like comes into play, but also sharply contrasts a lot of the dark surrealism that would later become his trademark. He originally wanted to be a painter,
Oh,
and yeah, I did not know that. But he studied at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. And during his study of painting, he started experimenting with the idea of moving images, which
mm,
led to his first short films. One of his earliest ones is called The Grandmother, which was 1970, and it blended live action and animation to tell the tale of a neglected boy growing a grandmother from a seed.
sure.
So right out the
So
gate,
he was like, "Hey, I'm here to do weird shit."
I'm here,
I
I'm
respect
weird.
that.
Yeah.
Get used
Yeah,
to
there was no like revving up to it. It was just
it.
right out there. Um so yeah, even here early, he's fascinated with kind of unsettling contrasts of
Mm,
this like childhood innocence but surreal horror layered on top. And when his work really starts gaining attention, the American Film Institute awarded him a grant to make the film, as Penny stated earlier, Eraserhead,
wee.
1977. And that's the film that would end up really launching him into his career and into the David Lynch that we know and love. Now, you said you've seen Eraserhead. That was one of the so my local theater has been
Uh-huh.
doing David Lynch memorial screenings this
Oh yeah.
week. And because I had not seen any of his work, I well, that's not true. As a queer person, I have seen Mulholland Drive.
Sure.
um, but I haven't seen a lot of the like the staples of the Lynchian zeitgeist. So I went to see Eraserhead with my friend Marissa. It was a first time viewing for me. Penny, what were your thoughts the first time you saw Eraserhead?
I was like, I get that this is art,
Mm-hmm.
but I I wouldn't say that it was something I enjoyed.
Okay, totally
It
respect that.
was I'm not a big surrealism person, I will
Sure.
say. I was definitely like, I respect what you are doing here. I did not find it a pleasant viewing experience, in
And
large
the
part
thing
because it
is,
is kind of
though,
sonically rotted, as Katya would say.
the worst. The worst sounds. And,
Yeah,
like,
real
that's what I was
bad
gonna say when
sounds.
you said, like, it's not an enjoyable experience. It's not supposed to be, though.
No, it's
Like,
not, yeah.
it does
Mhm.
what it sets out to do.
Totally, yeah.
Um,
That's what I say, like, it is an art piece. It's not
yeah.
like, this is a movie that I'm gonna pop on because I wanna watch a movie.
No, I watched it and I was like, "I'm glad I saw that. I will never watch that
Yep.
again, probably." So listeners, if you have ever seen Eraserhead, you know that it is really unlike anything else I've ever watched. I will say I am kind of a theater of the absurd, like a
Sure.
child of that. I was very, very into Samuel Beckett in college, and I
Mhm.
pretty much exclusively directed Samuel Beckett pieces during my time at university. Um, and I can definitely see I don't know for sure that Lynch was influenced by Beckett, but I would be shocked to find out that he wasn't.
Yeah.
Um, but apparently, so this movie was shot over 5 years, which is bonkers to
Oof.
me. And just a very small budget, but he did have this grant from the American Film Institute. But yeah, it's like a fever dream, and like Penny put out there, it's well, we'll get into it in a second.
Yeah,
Plot is
I'll say it makes a lot of sense to me now that you tell me that he wanted to be a painter, because it's
mhm.
a very, like, living painting type of film, and from I feel like.
Yeah, lots of, like, long pauses
Mhm.
and just kind of, like, tableaus.
Yeah.
So the film follows, our lead guy who right out the gate, it's pretty evident that this is sort of autobiographical
Mhm.
because Henry Spencer, the main character, has David Lynch's, like, iconic crazy hair.
Yeah, he's got
Um,
the hair.
he's got the crazy hair. And it follows kind of his story, if you want to call it that, of a man just kind of trapped in this decaying world of like loud noises, industrial sounds, and landscapes. There's a mutant baby. Um, and the sound design, what Penny pointed out, sonically rotted, is a really excellent way to put this. It is one of the most visceral sound experience, and I saw this in a theater.
Yeah, that's intense.
It was. There were multiple times where I found myself having to like, you know, the thing where you like plug your nose and breathe in to plug your ears.
Mhm.
I had to like stop up my ears a couple times because I was like, oh, I'm gonna have a panic attack. um, but it's really interesting, and I wish there was a little bit at the end where it said something. They put up a screen and it said something about um that it's shot in like mono sound or something like to that effect.
Mhm.
And I don't know, but the way the sound is done is very upsetting. Uh, but from what I got from the story, kind of a depiction of the fears of fatherhood and being like a parent. I, I literally wrote in my notes, Penny. It's funny that you kind of touch on this. I said I can't necessarily say that I recommend it,
Yeah.
but I also think it's worth watching.
Yeah.
Um, just if you're interested in David Lynch and what his work is and where it comes from, it's interesting to watch. But it is wild. And
Totally. It definitely it's one of those things where I'm like, this would make perfect sense for me to be, like, sitting in a dark gallery, and this is projected on a wall. Th
right.
that's the vibe.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I went and saw with my friend Marissa, and at the end we were both like kind of giggling, being like, "Man, can you imagine being like David Lynch's kid and watching?"
I know. I have definitely I remember I saw that being like, people commenting on that, obviously, with everyone memorializing him
Uh
recently
huh.
and being like, "Oh, dad, I heard you made a movie about your feelings on fatherhood." It's
Fatherhood.
like, watches Eraserhead. Oh.
And I'll tell you what, the body horror in this to me was worse than the substance.
Yeah, it was
It's really
grody. It was super
grotesque.
grody.
And it's all in black and white if you have no context. Just like if you guys are gonna go in and watch it, just know what you're in for.
Yeah.
It's desolate, it's grotesque, it's weird, and like
And it
just
sounds bad.
and it sounds bad, and it's quite long. Every time you start to be like, oh, it's over, it's not over. um but despite its strangeness, or I mean perhaps because of how
Indeed.
just out of the blue it was, Eraserhead gained a cult following, and Stanley Kubrick has even called this his favorite movie,
Oh, that makes
which
sense.
I said,
Sure it is,
okay.
Stanley. Of course it
Yeah.
is.
It's like that's something a film bro would say. He's like,
Yes.
I love Eraserhead, dude.
It's like my
I'm like,
favorite movie.
yeah, I'm like, is it an interesting film? For sure. Would I ever call this my favorite film? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But it also like it caught the attention of Mel Brooks, who ended up kind of being the person who brought Lynch into the mainstream and got him his first like big directing job later.
Mm-hmm.
So people were interested,
Yep.
to say the least. So with the success of Eraserhead, he gets the chance to direct the film The Elephant Man in 1980, which is a biographical drama about the man John Merrick, who was
Yes.
a man who had elephantitis and in the 19th century in London. This is very different from like if you've seen the stage adaptation of Elephant Man, it's not that. And David Lynch made a very big hoopla about being like, this is not romanticizing it. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like telling the like woohoo story about it.
Yeah,
Like
it's not
it was
inspirational content.
no, right. It's like gritty. Even though it's more of a conventional film than like Eraserhead, it definitely has this surrealness and darkness about it. And that was a commercial success. He
Mm-hmm.
got 8 Academy Award nominations for Elephant Man, and Hollywood starts really taking notice of his work. So then, I didn't. Here's how little I know about sci-fi. Then he gets put on the film Dune. Yes, that Dune,
Dune.
but the 1984 Dune,
Yes,
because
the
apparently
wacky
that
Dune.
happened,
Oh yeah,
and starring one Kyle MacLachlan.
of course.
I had no idea this even happened. I had never heard of Dune until the new one came out like
Oh
5
man,
years ago.
yes. I was from a Dune friend group in college. I did not read Dune, but I was friends with lots of people who were very into Dune.
Okay. Yeah, I had no context for this. But obviously now y'all have seen the popcorn bucket. Dune is a
Yeah,
huge commercial
it is.
success. But this adaptation was not.
Yes.
And it was plagued by a lot of like studio interference as well with what David Lynch wanted to do with it versus what actually happened. So it was a big old flop.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, since then, apparently it has gained a cult status because it's like goofy, but Lynch pretty loudly removed himself from
Yeah.
this project vocally,
Disowned Dune.
disowned it, and said that this is his least personal work and he has very like little attachment to it.
Sure.
But then we rebounded. 1986, he puts out Blue Velvet, a neo-noir that this kind of brings us back to the darkness. It cements his like style.
Mhm.
Once again, we got Kyle MacLachlan on the bill, Isabella Rossellini and Dennis Hopper, and the film explores a darkness lurking in suburban America. It was definitely controversial, but like widely praised overall, and even our good old buddy, old pal Roger Ebert,
Roger Ebert.
Roger called it brilliant and disturbing.
All right.
So,
Roger's on board.
we're all in at this point. It's the Lynch era, and here we come to 1990, Twin Peaks.
Dun, dun,
Um,
dun.
and many people call this the show that changed television forever. Whoa. Uh, I well, I'm gonna preface. So this was co-created with Mark Frost. It is about an FBI agent, Dale Cooper. Guess who plays him?
It's Kyle
It's
MacLachlan.
Kyle MacLachlan. We have a real like Johnny Depp Tim Burton love
Right.
affair
It's like,
happening
all
here.
right, I see. I see how it is.
Um, but Dale Cooper, he goes to Twin Peaks, the town, to kind of solve and unravel what's happened behind the murder of the young homecoming queen Laura Palmer. And what was really a standout about it was that it mixed these elements of mystery with surreal horror, but with the tone of like a melodrama soap opera,
Mm-hmm.
which had never really been done before. And this show is wild. I love it so much.
I have started it. I
I
I
love
need
it
to get back
so
into it.
much. I told so okay, now I'll get into my personal anecdote for a second.
Please.
So I've wanted to watch this show for years, and it's just one of those things that I've never, you're always like, oh, I'll get around to it.
Yep.
And then on literally like a whim, I think it popped up on Prime or something and was like, shows you might like Twin Peaks. And I was like, man, I've always wanted to watch that. Maybe I'll go ahead and watch the pilot, which is 90 minutes long, by the way. What a big buy-in to ask for. But I was like, I'll just give it a shot. And so I watched that on like Wednesday night. And the next morning was when they announced David Lynch had died.
Oh man.
And I was like, am
What?
I psychic? um, but I, so Taylor was like, oh, Twin Peaks, you've been wanting to watch that for a long time. How are you liking it? And I was like, I like it. This is like 2 episodes in.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, I think I like it. I was like, when you set your alarm for the morning, but then you wake up like an hour before your alarm and you're like, well, I don't need to get up yet, so I'll kind of just lay here,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't want to like fully fall asleep because I have to be up in like 40 minutes. And then you have those weird kind of lucid half awake, half asleep
Oh
dreams.
yes.
That's what the entirety of Twin Peaks feels like. And I love every second of it. It's like a mix of really emotionally profound and has a really important and distinct point of view, but it's also so absurd and he knows it. So it's just playing like I laugh out loud almost every episode, but not because it's bad. Like
Yeah.
it's purposefully being bad, and
Mm-hmm.
it's oh my gosh, I can't believe I haven't watched it before now. It's so fun. And it became a pretty big cultural phenomenon at the time that it came out. I recently was talking to my mother-in-law about it because I was like, oh, I started watching Twin Peaks. Did you ever watch that like when it was on? And she was like, oh, I didn't, but I remember like the who killed Laura Palmer
Mm-hmm.
like signs and stuff everywhere. She's like, it was all over the place, but I never like I didn't engage with it, but I knew what it was.
Yeah,
Uh
I think that famously there are shows that my dad was not supposed to watch because like me, I'm sure I get it from him. He has extremely vivid crazy dreams.
oh yeah.
Um but he tends to like throw things like throw his alarm clock or like try and like wrestle my mom away from falling off the edge of the bed because it's lava and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure I know Doctor Who definitely was, and I think Twin Peaks was one of those shows where she was just like, you cannot watch this. You're
Oh,
gonna have crazy dreams.
yeah, I had to literally take like a hiatus. I'm almost done with it, and but I was having the most wackadoodle dreams every freaking night. So yeah, we took a Steven Universe break, and now we're
There
now we're
you go.
back.
That's fair.
But so it was very very popular, but unfortunately, there's not a lot of it.
Yeah.
So you're like, why would it be that way if it was such a cultural phenomenon? Well, the studios once again ruin everything, and the network was really pressuring David Lynch to reveal who Laura's killer was. And then as soon as they did that, the show lost steam,
Yeah.
because that's the whole point of watching a murder show
Yep.
is to wait to find out who done it. So it was canceled after only 2 seasons, but had a really strong influence still. They returned and did Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me in 1992, the film. And then much later, and not too long ago, Twin Peaks The Return in 2017. Uh, so it's still like I mean, I think we're going to see not resurgence, like a revival of
Hmm.
Twin Peaks too, now that he's passed. But I didn't realize they had this recently, like that
Yeah, I knew
2017.
about the 90s one. I didn't know about the 2017 one.
Yeah, and it's like most of the original cast. So
Yeah,
I
nice.
I'm excited to watch that when I get there. So that really solidifies him, even though it kind of tapers off. And he gets to direct some other really great films, including Lost Highway in 1997, Mulholland Drive, as we talked about, 2001, and Inland Empire in 2006. And kind of back to what I was referring to with this dreamscape feeling of Twin Peaks, a lot of these films really explore that as well. His work feels very um dreamlike, and like
Hmm.
you're not quite, it's like when you're reading a book with an unreliable narrator, like you're not
Yeah.
quite sure what to believe or what's real or what's happening. And it's both this weird place of like comforting and disorienting,
Yeah.
because it feels, so much about it feels familiar. I think that's what's really successful about Twin Peaks is like it takes place in this small town, and every aspect of it, like all these characters, you know, these characters, you know, somebody from your hometown that's this person or that person. um and his films explore that a lot too. It's a lot of, you know, good versus evil, like very clear cut ideas, but presented in this very strange way.
Hmm.
uh, Beyond his like work as a filmmaker, he, like we said, also dabbled in painting. He did work as a musician, and he was a really big advocate for transcendental meditation.
I've heard that.
Yeah, it was like a big thing that he credited for fueling his creativity. And so he had a foundation that promotes meditation in schools and to help for folks who are trauma survivors as well. Um, he also just so in the wake of his passing, um, this was also like right when TikTok was going RIP,
Hmm.
but there was just an onslaught of all these people who had worked with him, even in small bit parts and things, taking time to talk about their experiences working with him. And I know it's obviously, you never know, right? You
Hmm.
never know what's up with people. See me devastated by Neil Gaiman.
Ugh,
Um,
yeah.
but but it does kind of seem like he was one of the good ones. Like everybody just has such good things to say about working with David Lynch, and how just kind he was, and really looked out for like all the people on his sets. Um, and so I think that I don't know. It's like you either, I guess, die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. But it seems like everybody has a lot of really positive things to say about him.
Yeah, he
Um,
always, I feel like, gave the vibe of just like a chill
Somebody's
guy with
dad.
like a real, like I always love that because sometimes it's like it's the people who have like the craziest art who are just kind of like, yeah, what's up? Like
Just
they don't
vibing.
don't feel the need to be like, whoa, but I'm so edgy and wacky, and it's like, the work speaks for itself.
Yeah, he said, I'm just a little guy in a suit.
I'm just a cool dude with poofy hair, and I love to meditate.
Exactly. Um, but yeah, I overall am I'm excited to continue my like dive. I was supposed to go see Blue Velvet on Monday, and I didn't get to, so I want to watch that. I have not
Mhm.
seen Blue Velvet, but I'm excited by. It's just cool to like be constantly discovering that there are artists you love that you like haven't even learned about yet, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
totally.
um and I am currently very hyper fixated, and I know that there are a lot of you out there who are Lynchians, so I wanted to take a moment and talk about him, memorialize him. R.I.P. David. You did good.
Hell yeah. And I mean, I feel like that's part of the fun of getting into someone maybe like later is then you're like, oh my gosh, I have this embarrassment of riches to explore now. And that's
Right.
so exciting because you're like, ooh, I really liked this. And it turns out you have all these movies that I can watch.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes, you like really like a piece by a director or writer or whatever, and then you like go to watch something else by them and the tone is just like
Yeah.
not even, and so he really did have this such distinct style that feels like he was dedicated to being spooky and absurd, and
Hell
I really appreciate and appreciate that, and I'm
yeah.
excited by that, and that, yeah, there's so much there to delve into. But if you are a big David Lynch fan and you want to tell me other things that I need to be watching, please do. Um, and if you are enjoying our podcast, it would mean a lot to us if you would tell us that. You can leave us a rating or a review wherever you listen. And I think, Penny, do you have a Spotify comment to share with us
I
today?
sure do.
You can leave Spotify comments if y'all didn't know.
Well, so this comment comes from Ange, who says, fresh hot review coming at you, winky face. I am just now realizing I can leave comments under episodes.
Hey!
Hey, where do I start? I discovered Midge's YouTube channel several years ago. As someone who is drawn to all things Halloween, macabre, dark history, I feel so connected to you ladies every time I hear this theme music. Please never stop. XOXO. I'm only allowed 30 more characters, so may I suggest a Murder She Wrote episode?
Mm.
Hmm. Perhaps.
I are you a Murder She Wrote girly?
I have watched some. I would not say I'm like a dedicated girly, but I did definitely like watch it in reruns.
So I don't know much about it, but I was gonna say if and when we do that, I know the person we need to have come talk about it.
Ooh.
We've got a ghoul friend who is the Murder She Wrote, like the authority on Murder She Wrote. So we'll have to discuss that and come back.
Yes. All right. But yes. So thank you so much, Ange. And yes, you can leave comments under Spotify episodes. Please feel
Yes,
free to
we
either
read
leave a
them.
review or just say what you think. We did also get a comment from Taylor last week on not last week 2 weeks ago on our Arctic episode and says thanks to this new episode my new hyperfixation is now Arctic expeditions and I'm not even mad about it. So there you go.
I saw Penny had put up like an ask me anything or something on Instagram, and somebody had asked you like, what's your favorite maritime disaster? I was like, man, people really know you. They really have you pegged.
They do. They really do.
Well, thank you all so much for listening today. If you would like to keep up with the pod, you can follow us over on Instagram at Ghouls Night in Pod. And if you're looking for me, I am all over the web at Midge Munster.
And you can find me at Penny Snark.
And until next time,
Goodbye.
goodbye.